Welcome aboard the Athletics Can't Wait Jets podcast, your nonstop shop for all things Jets with Tim McMaster, Zack Rosenblatt, and Marissa Dunn.
Can't wait.
Get ready for some meaningful January football, Jets fans. That's where we have arrived at. 2 games to go for the New York Jets, 2 wins and a little bit of help, not a ton of help. And this team is heading to the playoffs, snapping a long drought. The team they faced this week in a similar situation. Started great, struggled lately, and trying to get in. That is the Seattle Seahawks. We're going to preview that game. We're going to talk about Mike White returning to quarterback. We'll have our picks, of course, and we're going to be joined kind of Michael-Shawn, Dugar, and Zach had a debate on a different podcast, and we have borrowed it. It's good content, so we'll run that as well. Lots of great stuff coming up on the Can't Wait podcast. I'm Tim McMaster along with Zack Rosenblatt and Marissa Dunn. Let's jump into it, guys. We have a fun guest too. I should throw that as well for picks.
I am live in Seattle, by the way.
Oh, that's where I was going to start.
I had to close the. Sorry to jump on your points, but I had to close the curtains because it's like so gloomy and like cloudy outside that like the lighting was very weird in here. So actually,
you know what's going on there though in your shot. If people are tuning in on YouTube as opposed to the audio version, there's like a green glow. I think it's off the microphone mixed with your shirt and the background. There's like a Jets vibe going on.
There you go. Yeah, it's definitely on purpose for sure.
Or you could say it's a Seahawks vibe, but we'll go with the Jets vibe.
See, Marissa, and you just raised your coffee, and we talked about this before. It is iced coffee, which I think people have come to respect and appreciate from you, depending
respect
on,
or expect. I don't know.
Expect.
It varies. Yeah.
No matter what time of year it is. But it is not Starbucks, and you're in Seattle.
No, it is not.
Fighting back,
fighting the man. It's actually a place called Diva Coffee, which seems fitting for my role on this show.
Well, it would have been more fitting if it was your predecessor, but
I was just going to say the exact same thing.
That was a better joke. Good point.
Spot on, Tim. Spot on.
All right. With that, let's get into things. Obviously, we talked about it a bit on the first episode of the week on Tuesday. Mike White making his return to the starting lineup for the Jets. But obviously, since we recorded that podcast, Mike White's gotten to talk and the team got to talk about it. So just fill us in, Zach, between Tuesday and now that we record Friday. What's the feeling around this team heading into this game with Mike White back under center?
It's funny. It just kind of, I don't know, this week felt like deja vu in a lot of ways. The difference being that people like have a little better idea what to expect with Mike White than like when he was first named the starter. But, you know, you heard a lot of the same stuff from Robert Saleh earlier in the week about Zach Wilson. You're hearing a lot of the same stuff about Mike White and guys talking about him and the boost he can provide. And I don't know. It's just very interesting to me. It just feels like we're back to where we were going into that first game he started against the Bears a little bit. But yeah, we talked about this earlier in the week. You really do get a vibe in the locker room that they thought they were dead. I think everybody was well aware of like the chances of them making the playoffs after they lost that game on Thursday night. And it's like a renewed positivity. It feels like which had been there even during the losing streak. And you kind of didn't feel that after the Jaguars game, but with the way everything played out, this team really does feel like it can get there now. Mike White, out of all their quarterbacks, he's the most likely one to get them there. It's not going to be easy on Sunday. That, as we were talking about before the pod, the Seahawks and Jets are like eerily similar in the way that they've gotten to this point. They're both fighting for it. The game next, even if they win this week, they have to win next week too, against the Dolphins team that is a little bit in disarray right now, but they're talented. So yeah, it's gonna be a fascinating couple weeks. And as we talked about, again, it's hard not to like repeat the same points because we've been talking about like we said, I get complaints from some like readers about always talking about the quarterbacks. And I feel like we've like re-hit the same points because guys keep getting hurt and then coming back in and then they keep reshuffling the order of the quarterbacks. And, but yeah, I don't know. We're going to learn a lot about Mike White these next 2 weeks. I think he knows that he's done a good job of like not talking about that kind of thing. He's kind of like Saleh in the way that he's good at like saying all the right things. He's like, I'm not thinking about that. I'm just trying to, win for my teammates and all this stuff. They had some interesting behind the scenes with him and his wife and his kids. They do a One Jets Drive series every week, not every week, but it's like a Hard Knocks type thing. I actually made a pretty big cameo this week. I sent you guys the clip a little while ago. It was the moment we found out Zach Wilson was starting against the Lions. It's like me telling another reporter in the room and us being like, oh boy. But
check that out. Boy Green tweeted that out. I think that specific clip, if people have.
Exactly. But they had some behind the scenes stuff with Mike White and his kids and his wife, and he said a lot of the same stuff that they both like said to me, but they actually like showed them like playing with the kids behind the scenes. And I don't know, it was cool seeing the home side of him, but he also was talking they also were talking a bit about when he got hurt against the Bills. It was interesting to me hearing it from his wife's perspective, because I'm sure you've kind of dealt with this, Marissa, to a degree when you're like not at a game. I don't know if Michael's gotten like hurt when you weren't at a game or anything, but she was saying like, so the first time he goes down, he stays in. She figured he just like had the wind knocked out of him. Then he goes to the locker room and she has no idea what's going on until somebody eventually calls her.
There's a lot of like team officials. I know like in our situation, one of the security guys is great with updating family members when somebody gets hurt, but it's a pretty helpless feeling.
Especially when you're in your living room or whatever.
When during training camp, when one of the preseason games, we had a friend that's boyfriend got hurt, and I was at the game and she was texting me, and like I felt so bad. Like I was in the stands, I didn't know, but it is a very helpless feeling.
I never really
somebody you care about, down on the field.
Totally.
And you really can't get any information.
And I never thought about that on like that side of it, honestly, before until I was watching this. But yeah, it was just the part I was getting to is, she was like freaking out. She didn't know what happened. And then he goes out onto the field and they ask her like, were you surprised that he went back on the field? She's like, no. And Mike's like, you would have to drag me off the field. In retrospect, it might've been a little risky throwing him out there, but they didn't have like the full breadth of like the x-rays and all that or whatever the test they needed. But anyway, a little sidetrack there, but you learn a lot about Mike White that I feel like we haven't really, like when Zach Wilson was the quarterback. I never felt like, this isn't a criticism because some guys like their privacy, but you never felt like you really were getting to know Zach Wilson when he was a quarterback here. I know he's focused on trying to become big, but even just in these few weeks, I feel like the whole fan base like knows everything there is to know about Mike White already. And another thing that I keep coming back to and I keep thinking about, which is crazy to think about, and why their decision about whether he's the guy is so fascinating, is that he's only started, like we said, I think we said this earlier in the week, he's only started 6 games in his career. This will be like his 7th career start. Like that's pretty crazy. That's less than a guy that after his rookie season, like at the end of this year, he's going to have started a max of 8 games in his career. And they have to decide if he's a starting quarterback for 2023 on a team that wants to make the playoffs. Like it's a very difficult decision the Jets have. You can make it a lot easier if he gets them to the playoffs. Even then, I still don't know if it's an easy decision, because you're still like, all right, do we have enough sample size here to say we believe him as a starter, or would we rather go and get someone like Jimmy Garoppolo, Derek Carr, who we're going to talk about? Like, would we rather go and get somebody who's a more proven commodity, has more, body of work, has been to the playoffs, all that stuff. So I don't know. Mike White can make the decision way more difficult than if he just has a couple of bad games, obviously.
Yeah, and he downplayed the idea that he's playing for his long-term future with the team this week when asked, which is probably what you would expect to hear from Mike White when asked that question. You mentioned Derek Carr, so let's go there next. Raiders officially benching Derek Carr for the final 2 games of the season, not because he's playing badly, but because if for some reason he was to get injured in these last 2 games, they would owe him $40 million over the next 2 seasons, $33 million for 2023 and $7.5 for 2024. Now, the key to that is like, if he was the planned quarterback for 2023, that wouldn't really be that scary of a risk, because that's what you expect to pay a franchise quarterback. So obviously it points to the Raiders being ready to move on. It's funny that Jarrett Stidham is going to get the start for the Raiders because he's a guy who was drafted with the Patriots, and there was thoughts at one point that maybe he was going to be Tom Brady's replacement. And Josh McDaniel, I think, wanted him to get some action at some point with the Patriots. It never happened. But now these years later in Las Vegas, McDaniel will see what he has in Josh Stidham. But it's interesting. Where does he fit as far as the Jets go, Zach? Because we've talked about a lot of names who could be the Jets quarterback in 2023. We hadn't discussed his name yet. It would have to be via trade.
I wouldn't say it 100% has to be. I still
right. That's
there's still a part of me that thinks he might get cut just because that contract is pretty significant. So if you have to agree to renegotiate, he has no trade clause. Also, as a factor, that's why there's so many like interesting layers to this Derek Carr discussion. Because first of all, I think you've seen both sides of people criticizing the Raiders for the way they're handling it. Which I get, like, and it seems like his teammates maybe aren't happy with it, and I get all of that. But also, if the Raiders aren't planning on keeping him next year, like if he gets hurt, you're locked into a lot of money, and they're a team that has done a really poor job managing their roster, and I think they have to completely rebuild everything. Which I'm sure Devontae
I think
Adams.
The crazy thing is that they haven't been eliminated from the playoffs.
Yeah, that's
sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. I forgot about that point. They're technically, I mean, they would need like a million things to happen, but yeah, they're technically still in the playoff race. And then in terms of like what happens next for him, like I said, there's the no trade clause. So he has to go somewhere he wants to go if they're going to trade him. The team that's acquiring him either have to be okay with the contract he has, or they have to get him to negotiate down to reduce the cap hits coming up, because they're pretty, I forget what the numbers are, but he would be guaranteed something like 30-something million this next year. And some of the next year he would be guaranteed money. And that year he's making, I think there's like a 40-something million cap hit. Like, I think Derek Carr is a solid quarterback. I don't know if you want to be paying him $40 million. And so that's kind of, so we had a story in The Athletic this week where a bunch of the writers that cover teams that are candidates to trade for him, like, came up with trade offers for Derek Carr. I had a tough time coming up with one for the Jets because, number one, they're not like flush with cap space this offseason. They can clear out some guys, but they're not flush with cap space. I think you'd be better off waiting to see if he hits free agency than trading too much for him. And also, I'm not 100% sure if he's the best fit out of all the candidates. Like, everybody points out, he's really bad in cold weather his whole career, and it's going to be cold in MetLife. I mean, not in the beginning of the season, but it will be as the season progresses. And, if Derek Carr looks at the Jets, like, does their offensive line appeal to him? Because I'm sure he wants to get behind a good offensive line because he hasn't really had that in a while. You do have the weapons, you do have the elite defense, so there is like definitely an appeal here. It's an up and coming team, good coaching staff, all that stuff. But I don't know. Is he the best option? Like, my offer was a 3rd round pick and a 5th round pick, which I think Jets fans would probably be okay with.
Right, but probably won't get it done. That's the questionable thing, right?
That's the thing. Like, so if the Raiders, to your point, like, it probably will be a trade because you can see a team like the Colts or Washington like paying too much for a guy like that because they've done that in the past. Carson Wentz, both of them traded for Carson Wentz too much. So you could see that happening. Like I said, Derek Carr has people. The funny thing is, Derek Carr would be the best quarterback the Jets have had statistically since like Joe Namath, but they're good enough now that it's like, is he the right one for what we had? Like, it's funny. Like, the Jets are in a place where they can afford to be nitpicky, kind of. But also, you don't want to be sitting there at the end of the offseason and not have any of the great options if you're being too cheap. So it's going to come down to who Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh want the most and how much they're willing to go after those guys. And I mean, Jimmy G makes the most sense on paper. Doesn't mean they're going to go after him or if he's their guy. I think you can see scenarios where they either do a guy like Jimmy G. By the way, I mean, we'll get into him in the offseason, I'm sure. He comes with injury risk, so you need a good backup at that point. And are you going to be okay with Zach Wilson as your number 2, or are you going to be willing to pay Mike White whatever it takes to make him the backup? Like, that's another aspect of it. But anyway, so I do think the Jets are absolutely a candidate for Derek Carr. I'm just not sure they would trade maybe what it would require to get him. If he does wind up breaking free and hitting free agency, I think they would explore it. I think they'll explore a few of these options. But I'm less confident that the Jets will wind up with Derek Carr than maybe some of these other teams that might want him.
Certainly going to be interesting. One more name into the mix. It's going to be a fascinating offseason when it comes to the quarterbacks. All right, let's move on to the Seahawks in this week. And speaking of quarterbacks, Seattle's in an interesting place, right? When it comes to quarterback. Well, first of all, these teams, let's talk about the similarities because they were both 6-3 through 9 weeks. They're both 7-8 now. They're both clinging to playoff life. Seattle, 22.7% chance of making the playoffs, slightly more than the Jets, but really the scenarios are the same. Both teams need to win their final 2 games and get some help. And honestly, I think the help the Jets need is a little easier than the help that Seattle needs, but the percentages are what they are when it comes down to the people that are coming up with that stuff. But what that comes down to is that we're looking at a playoff game on Sunday in Seattle. The winner stays alive. The loser is all but done. the teams have done it differently too. The Jets obviously led by their defense. Seattle's defense is one of the worst in the league, and they were led for half the season by their offense. And that brings us to Geno Smith, who was supposed to be a stopgap, right? Like they trade Russell Wilson, and you would think, all right, we're going to get by with Geno.
Rebuilding year,
Yeah, and then eventually we'll figure out what we do at quarterback. And then at the midway point in the season, hey, we found our franchise quarterback. He's 32 years old, but here we go. But now he's kind of taken a few steps back. So they're in a fascinating place when it comes to quarterback as well.
Yeah, and even beyond, like I went on a radio show in Seattle, and I went on our athletic Seahawks podcast, Man to Man, which we're going to be having a clip from in a little bit. But and we were talking, and it's very similar seasons also in the sense that both teams came into the year thinking this was like a rebuilding year, like maybe we don't make the playoffs. I think the Seahawks expectations were lower than the Jets, honestly. And now, like, they both started really well, and so the expectations got raised, and the idea of making the playoffs became the expectation. And then they both went into this late season swoon, and now fans are, I think on the verge of being upset. I don't know what the vibe is in Seattle. It sounded like from those conversations, they're more in the camp of it's not worth like getting it. If you're not going to make the playoffs, they almost would lose the last two games so they can go and get a quarterback. Whereas I think Jets fans are so desperate to get back to the playoffs that they're like, you guys better make the playoffs. So that part fascinated me too. And the funny thing, the Geno, obviously there's the Jets connection with Geno. The Jets have used like Geno as an example of why Zach Wilson can bounce back from whatever's going on here.
8 years from now.
Yeah, that's how I was gonna say. So in 2026, just lock Zach in for the Super Bowl, not Super Bowl, the Pro Bowl. Anyway, but I mean, the Geno story is pretty remarkable. Honestly, I don't think anybody saw this coming this year. I know he's had a couple of bad games in a row, but I mean, if the Jets have Geno Smith as their quarterback right now, they probably have 2 more wins at least. I mean, you can say it about a lot of guys, but the fact that we're saying about Geno Smith says a lot. And there's a lot of symmetry there in terms of rookies kind of leading these teams. The battle for offensive and defensive rookie of the year. The defensive one we're going to talk about with my conversation with Michael-Shawn Dugar. But Garrett Wilson's also batting with Kenneth Walker, their running back. So like this game can go a long way towards clinching the award for either Sauce or Garrett Wilson kind of thing. I still think both are the front runners in those awards. And but yeah, it's a fascinating matchup. I think the Jets match up with them pretty well, but they have not scored the ball lately. And that includes against 2 defenses that were supposed to be bad. Like the Seahawks defense on paper is not very good, but the Lions and Jaguars defenses have been giving up points and yards all year, and the Jets couldn't do anything with it. Same with the Vikings defense, and the Jets, kept getting stopped in the red zone. If the Jets offense does not get going, they're not going to win 2 games in a row. It doesn't matter who you're playing against. So that's kind of if the season ends and they only have 7 or 8 wins, we're going to look back and be disappointed that the offense was not able to live up to how good the defense was. And I think it's worth a conversation about who deserves the blame for that and all that, but that we can save that for another day.
When you look at Geno and how he struggled recently, last week, the Chiefs really got to him. He was hit 7 times, I think. 215 on the yardage. He had a touchdown, a pick. His rating was 74.5, but he's thrown 5 interceptions in the last 5 weeks after really being pretty stingy with the ball early on in the season. And it feels like this is a game where turnovers are going to be key. Yes. And I think you look at that and the fact that, and the deeper numbers kind of tell the story too, that he's been making riskier throws in the second half of the season. This is an opportunity for this Jets defense to really make an impact with turnovers.
Yeah, I mean, that's been a problem area for as good as the defense has been. They have 1 forced turnover, I think, since the bye, and that was against the Bears late in the game when C.J. Mosley had the interception when the game was already over. So they haven't had a meaningful forced turnover in a long, long time. They know that. Jeff Ulbrich has really talked about how that needs to be fixed. They need to capitalize on these plays. I think a lot of the debate with Sauce and Tariq Woolen has been about how Sauce doesn't have interceptions. Like, this is a real opportunity for him to change that. The Seahawks, it wouldn't surprise me if they avoided Sauce, but they do have DK Metcalf who can match up with anybody because he's a freak of nature. And if Tyler Lockett plays, which I think they're expecting him to, I'm not 100% sure on that, he's another challenge. So whoever Sauce winds up against, the ball's going to eventually wind up in his area. And I think this would be a huge opportunity for him to make a statement about how it's not even a discussion with him and Tariq. So they need to force turnovers. A lot of that starts with pressure up front. But yeah, I guess they did force a fumble. Quinn Williams did force a fumble last week, I should say.
Right at
early in the game.
Yep.
Yeah. Didn't mean to forget that. Yeah, somebody's pointing that out now. Just thought of that. But anyway, they need turnovers, and they need to win the turnover battle. And they need the offense to score. They need to force turnovers. They need the offense to be more productive. And we're gonna really find. I mean, it's the end of the season. Obviously, you hope you find out about the team, but we're gonna. If they can come out and have a good offensive game, then all of a sudden you start thinking, maybe the Jets are kind of frisky with Mike White all of a sudden. And if they beat the Seahawks, and you hope that your Jets fans should be rooting for the Dolphins this week to beat the Patriots, because ultimately even if the Jets win both games, if they wind up with the same record as the Patriots get in. So, yeah, you want to root for the Dolphins this week and then win and in next week. And if they can get the offense going this week, the Dolphins defense is beatable, I think. So maybe you go into the last week feeling better about things, even if it's in Miami, where the Jets, it's been kind of a house of horrors there over the years.
And Tua has been ruled out for that game. Not necessarily the Jets game yet, although it feels like that's a very good possibility as well. Yeah. But he won't be playing, and that game's in New England. Over the years, that series goes that way a lot, where the Patriots can never handle the hot weather in Florida early in the season, and then the Dolphins can never handle the cold weather in New England at the end of the season. They end up splitting. So it'll be interesting. But the Dolphins or the Patriots get the Bills in week 18 too, so there's that could go down. All right, that's going to bring us to the clip that you have with Michael-Shawn. Dugar, Zach, you want to late night TV talk show set this thing up for us?
Set up the clip. So in this scene, you'll see that. We both kind of semi debated. We more just presented the case for Sauce and Tariq as the defensive rookie of the year. I think Michael-Shawn Dugar makes a pretty good case for Tariq. He brings out a lot of stats. I didn't come as prepared with the stats. It was more just I talked about just watching Sauce dominate all season and shut people down. And I actually I wrote about Sauce today in The Athletic. I wrote a story about how great Sauce's season has been and how Tariq's the one thing standing in the way of him making history, because in the last 40 years, only 4 rookies have been Pro Bowlers, All-Pro, and Defensive Rookie of the Year. I think Sauce has a real shot at that. The last ones were Michael Parsons last year, Ndamukong Suh, Patrick Willis, and Javon Curse. And no cornerback has ever done the triumvirate. So Tariq Woolen's the only thing standing in the way of that, I think. I'm guessing as of right now, Sauce gets voted in All-Pro. I maybe that's a bold take, but I really think that's a high possibility. And then if he wins Defensive Rookie of the Year, it could not have gone much better for your draft pick if that's what happens. So anyway, so our conversation is about Tariq and Sauce, and we kind of get into it a little bit. And Mike has a lot of stats that kind of back it up. But I enjoyed going on their pod, and we had a good chat, I think, about this.
So we'll have a quick break and then we'll roll the clip. With Masterclass, you can learn from the world's best artists, icons, and leaders anytime, anywhere, and at your own pace. You can learn how to cook from Gordon Ramsay, improve your basketball skills from Steph Curry, and even learn songwriting from the great John Legend. With over 180 classes from a range of world-class instructors, that thing you've always wanted to do is closer than you think. Masterclass is the perfect gift to gift somebody this holiday season. My nephew loves basketball. I've talked about this before, and he thought the Steph Curry class was so cool. You can start and stop at any time, and you truly feel like you're getting a personalized one-on-one lesson from one of the greatest basketball players of all time. I highly recommend you check it out. This holiday, give the perfect gift of an annual membership and get one free. Go to masterclass.com/firstdown today. That's masterclass.com/firstdown. Terms apply.
All right. It's time for the greatest debate in sports. It is time. Tariq Woolen versus Sauce Gardner. 2 favorites for Defensive Rookie of the Year. The Seahawks have already basically every time they mention Tariq in a tweet this week, they have called him potential Defensive Rookie of the Year winner. They're feeding into it. I loved Sauce's tweet.
That was really funny. Yeah.
Dang it! Why didn't I save it? Chris, do you have that? you have Sauce's tweet? Can you find that from me real quick?
Still up, I think, because he didn't delete it, so I think it's still up. I looked it up the other day.
You can't delete that. That's just an amazing, just so much shade. You got that, Chris?
Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now. Give me a second.
I would love a rookie rivalry here, man.
Oh yeah, I was thinking about that. I was thinking about that when this week was coming up because it's kind of cool to have rookies kind of doing this. I feel like guys don't really do this kind of stuff anymore, where they kind of talk a little trash.
Nah, they really don't. And I think I'm about to put my old head hat on. But I feel like it is what we're seeing in basketball and football. It's that these guys all play on these like 7-on-7 select.
They all know each other and stuff.
Yeah, they go to these Nike camps and they meet each other when they're 15 and they try to recruit each other to these schools and they're all buddy. So by the time they all get to the league, it's kind of like more brotherhood, less feud, which is fine. But yeah,
and also I feel like when you get to the NFL, a lot of these coaches are trying to tell them like don't make a headline from your comments, whereas Sauce like can't help himself. And I don't know what Tariq's like personality wise, but Sauce like, you ask him something and Sauce like can't help but like say a little something every now and then.
Yeah, Tariq's pretty reserved in that way. Doesn't say a lot, but if you poke him, you know, like he'll he might say something. You got that tweet, Chris?
Man, how far was it? Man, when did he sent this
I
out?
Found it. I can read it if you want.
Oh, there we go.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I should have asked the Jets reporter.
He said, Jets Nation, just want to say that y'all are the reason I passed whoever was leading in Pro Bowl votes at the cornerback position. And then he thanks the fans for supporting him. But the main point is that line. So whoever
leads.
Oh. And he knew what he was doing when he did that too. Like,
oh yeah, he 100% knew who leads. If he didn't know just by looking it up, his agent A would tell him, or B, Jets fans would tweet it directly to him, like screen grab.
Oh, and he was I know for a fact he was tracking the votes. There was one day in the locker room when the voting was still up. I'm like all the way across the locker room, and he yells across, "Hey Zach, you vote for me yet?" I was like, "I'm not voting, Sauce. You can vote. You're a fan of the game." I was like, "All right."
All right, so I have we did an exercise, me, Zach, and Colton. Shout out to Colton who covers the Lions, doing a great job covering them for the Athletic. We basically had to like make a bid for the defensive rookie of the year candidates that we covers. Colton handling Aiden Hutchinson, who's having a great year. Zach handling Sauce, and myself handling Tariq, who's playing well. So I already have a bunch of numbers in front of me for this, but Zach, I want you to go, or I can read some numbers for you, but I want you to make the case for the good old Sauce Gardner as a defensive rookie of the year. What you got? Floor is yours.
Yeah, he's just like, just in terms of the Jets, he's changed everything they can do on defense just because he's completely shut down his side of the field. These last few weeks, he wasn't targeted against the Lions a single time, which I can't think of many times our rookie hasn't been targeted over the course of like 4 quarters in a long time. Like that's like an old school, like on an island thing where because of the rules, it's been like harder to have a guy that can do that, where he shuts down a whole side of the field. And so he's allowed Robert Saleh to do all the things that they want to do on defense. And, he's gone against all the star receivers this season, and not a single one of them has really. Stephon Diggs beat him for a long catch when they played the Bills. It was the first catch of the game, and then Diggs did not beat him the rest of the game. He gave up a touchdown against the Browns, but it was a miscommunication with the safety. Like the safety was supposed to come over and help, and he didn't. And so that was the only touchdown he's given up all year. And so you look at, I know he doesn't have the interceptions. I think he has 2. I think he's among the league leaders in pass deflections.
He is the league leader.
Forced incompletions, I believe, on PFF. He's up there, if not the league leader. He's one of the top couple. And yeah, he just doesn't get beat. And then if he does, it's like one time in a game. And they don't really move him to like follow guys, which I know some have taken that as like a negative, I guess. But he is capable of like in week 1 against the Ravens, he followed Mark Andrews. Like this is his first game of his career, and he's shutting down Mark Andrews, who's like one of the 5 best tight ends in the league. And so he's just been able to do some really amazing things. He's a pretty solid tackler. He had a blitz against the Dolphins that injured Teddy Bridgewater and got a safety and kind of set that game off where they killed them. And he just made such an impact on this defense where both him and DJ Reed together, but especially him, they shut things down on the back end that allows Quinnen Williams to dominate up front. And I don't know. I honestly haven't watched enough Seahawks to like completely judge how they use Tariq Woolen or anything like that. I can only base it on what I see, and I have a hard time believing there's even been very many better corners in the NFL this year than Sauce. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Here we go. That's a good pitch.
Oh, thank you.
Also, I will say this: I watch there's like 3 teams that I'm just oddly tuned into. There's 4. It's the Chargers, the Lions, the Jets, and the Dolphins.
Wow, those are 4 teams that are just messes too. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Wow, I did not put that connection together. I guess I would just need like the Commanders or something to really
exactly. Yeah,
this dysfunction circle. But yeah, those 4 teams I'm just following closely for just strange. I don't know. I just don't like. I follow you. I follow Will. I follow Connor. Like I follow a bunch of people who cover the Jets. I would not follow otherwise. But I would to add to that. When you watch some film of Sauce, like that dude looks like he'll be good forever. Like he could be the dude who, if he's like 46 years old and still wants to play, and his son is a rookie, like put Sauce and Sauce Jr. in the same secondary on some Frank Gore and Frank Gore Jr. shit.
And he was blessed with some God-given like size and athleticism too. Like you can't like recreate Sauce. Like I've never seen a corner that. I mean, Tariq Woolen honestly is probably one of the only other ones that kind of looks like him, where he's tall and fast and athletic. So like his ability to like, if somebody gets behind him, he recovers in a really amazing way where he still breaks passes up. So I don't know, he from literally day one in training camp, and I try not to make too much in training camp, but sometimes you can kind of tell if a guy's like the real deal. Like he was not getting beat by anybody one-on-one, and that includes Garrett Wilson, who's a stud now, Corey Davis, a veteran, Elijah Moore. Like anyone he was lining up against, he was shutting them down in camp. And when they had joint practices, he picked off Desmond Ridder. I mean, he practiced against Ridder a lot, so I'm sure that wasn't as hard for him as some other quarterbacks. But yeah, I don't know. Since day one, since I got here, which was in training camp, I've never really covered a player that was this good right away before.
This dude got some. The ceiling on this guy is crazy. And the thing that we have, as we get to Tariq here, the thing that we have in Seattle, which is very like good for evaluating corners, is DK. Right, so it's like if you can go one-on-one with that guy, it's just like, all right, he is the measuring stick. Can you handle this in practice?
Yeah, because they don't make many receivers that look like him. Yeah,
right. Yeah, like you'll be fine generally speaking. Some of the unicorns out there, it really doesn't help. Like covering DK, I don't think prepares you too much at all for like covering Stephon Diggs, for example. Like that's just totally different.
Yeah.
Get the point. But yeah, that's Tariq. That early in camp, very similar to Sauce. It was just like, wow, they sure can't catch a ball on this guy. Well, that's weird because he's a rookie. Oh, well, no end zone fade to DK. I can't catch it. Holy shit. Wow. And this is when Tariq's like the backup, to think that like 3 weeks into the training camp or whatever, it was like, there's 2 other guys better than Tariq? Beats me. 2 guys who don't play. One of them's not even on the team anymore. And Sidney Jones. I do want to read some stuff on Tariq here and Sauce, because I do think they are the 2 best corners in football.
Yeah, which is pretty crazy, but I agree, honestly.
Honorable mention to James Bradbury of the Eagles, who I don't think made the Pro Bowl, which is weird, but probably also one of the best corners in football this year. Crazy. Anyway, read some of these numbers here, which are really great for both guys. Passer rating allowed, which is flawed, but I still like using it for corners. Tariq's at 53, which is second among all corners, minimum 200 snaps, so we weed out some of the guys who play like 1 snap. Sauce is at 63.3. That's 6th. This is all according to Next Gen stats. Shout out to them. Yards allowed per coverage snap, which is also a good stat for corners, which is not as flawed. It's actually really good. Sauce and Tariq tied for 4th at 0.8. That's nuts. I'll put that in perspective. That's not even a full fucking yard, man. Like these guys aren't giving up anything when they're out there covering. Pretty ridiculous. And if they do, they're not giving up a lot of yards. Hawk rate, and I love hawk rate. I've mentioned this on the show before. Hawk rate is the rate at which a guy makes a play on the ball when he's targeted. Just a great way of gauging corners, whether you pick it or knock it down. It's just great. Tariq leads all corners at 25.5%. Insane. 1 every 4 times you throw it at Tariq,
he's getting his hands on it. Yeah.
Sauce 22.9 is number 2. Just ridiculous. That 23%. So that's not 1 every 4. That's like, I don't know. I'm not good at math, but either way, I know that's a shit ton, which is why it's second. Tariq leads the league in interceptions with 6, also a pick 6. Sauce has 2, tied for I think 14th. There's a shit ton of guys with 2. Passes defense, Sauce leads the whole league with 16, which is nuts because I think he's played every game, right? 15.
Yep.
15 games. So 16 passes defense in 15 games.
Yeah.
That's bananas. Tariq has 14 in 15 games. He's tied for 3rd. Like these dudes are just right on it with one another. The next gen stat stuff on touchdowns allowed gets a little funky. Like you said, Zach, Sauce is really only giving up 1. He's credited with 2. Tariq's credited with giving up 3. really only giving up 2. I don't really like.
And PFF has Tariq with 5, which I'm guessing is wrong.
Yeah, PFF's numbers. There's a reason why I like Next Gen for DB stuff in general, safeties and corners.
Yeah,
because PFF does a lot of not guessing. I don't want to say that. That dismisses the intelligence of their guys.
Yeah, it's just more like they're evaluating it based on without having all the information or whatever. Yeah.
Bingo. Yeah, it's a lot of projecting. That's probably the better word. Like assuming this was the coverage, all that other stuff. Targets as the nearest defender, Sauce has 70s, Tariq at 55. Tariq has the 3rd lowest target rate among corners at 12.4, Sauce at 15.2. So you got 2, which is tied for 20th. You got 2 dudes here built like fucking freaks, covering the ass off, making plays on the ball when they come. But the reason I think Tariq is the guy for Defensive Rookie of the Year just far is when the ball does come his way, he is making plays on it at quite literally the highest rate in the league with 6 interceptions. And here's an interesting thing, Zach, and I'm curious where you stand on this. The not getting thrown at thing, because I had this argument with Jets fans quite a bit recently. Getting retweeted by you.
I always worry when I retweet people because Jets Twitter can be pretty mean, but you've dealt with them, you said. So
yeah, the Jamal Adams trade has actually prepared Chris and I for dealing with Jets fans. They're a lively bunch there, yeah, and they do not like Jamal.
Not to real quick, funny thing about like the PFF stuff. So like Sauce is well aware about how crazy Jets fans are, and so like there was a time where he got dinged for a touchdown that he didn't actually give up, and he quote tweeted it, and then Jets Twitter just like went at PFF until they changed it, and the PFF changed it. So
that's what I've also learned about PFF. I don't want to just shit on them, but they can be like a phone call from a player or a coach can get them to change some shit. Like I know a player on the Seahawks a couple years ago he hit them up after the season and he got like 200 yards removed.
Oh my God. I did not know that. Wow.
Yeah, I'm not naming the player, but that's like, so they can be swayed. And I feel like if you're doing your job right with DBs, you should never be that far off. Like you should not be hundreds of yards. Off on a touchdown can be whatever, but like, dude, how you think I gave up 600 yards? And then I could convince you I gave up half of that in a phone call?
Yeah, that's bad.
That's pretty cool. I'll tell you guys when we're done recording which player that was. But the not getting thrown at thing is so interesting because I was really big on that, particularly when I growing up loving Revis and Sherm in particular, because they were 2 guys who were able to shut shit down. And then the more I watch, and I'm curious on how this has worked out for Sauce, like how that's going when he's not getting targeted, what is happening? Because you can see a guy not get targeted. Like the Seahawks have had problems with that. I'll give the most extreme example. One game they had him shadow Antonio Brown. I think it's 2015. Antonio had like 60 yards. But then like Martavius Bryant or something, or Marcus Wheaton had like 200. And Big Ben threw for like 400. So the not being thrown at thing cannot always be inherently good for the defense. Like they could score a touchdown still. Or they could throw a pick six somewhere else. You never really know. But when Sauce isn't getting targeted, Zach, what is happening with the Jets defense? Is it like usually a net positive when quarterbacks are forced to go the other way?
That's an interesting way to phrase the question. I'll say what teams tend to do against the Jets, and they've done this even when in weeks when they would target Sauce a little bit more. They try to dink and dunk them to death. It's all in the middle of the field. They're going after Michael Carter II, who's their nickel corner. He's pretty solid. I think that's I think it's underrated how hard of a job it is to be a nickel corner, honestly. But so he gets targeted a lot. So a lot of the yards come from the running backs on screens, and they come from tight ends getting covered by the linebackers. The Lions like barely even targeted Amon-Ra St. Brown. I know he's mainly in the slot, but like the outside, I don't think DJ Chark really had any targets that game. So they really change what the teams are playing have to do against them. I'll say, which I think is an impactful thing. Like you're not seeing teams really take shots down the field against the Jets as much. And when they do, it's because they did like some sort of trick play and they tricked the linebackers and the tight ends wide open, like against the Lions. So I don't know. Like we talked about, the defense has been really good this year. So I think it's what they're doing is working. They don't give up very many points. They don't give up a lot of rushing yards most weeks. And their problem has mostly been on the short yardage thing. So I think what it does is it forces teams to try and beat them slowly. And some teams are able to do it because the Jets haven't been scoring on offense. And other teams are not really able to do that. And that's where the Jets have been able to win. So
yeah, you'll need like 17 points or something like that.
I think there's something like 7-1 when they score more than 18 points. And 18's not even that much. So that tells you everything. Yeah.
That's an amazing stat.
Yeah.
All right, welcome back. Good conversation, Zach. Do you know, now that you've listened to it back, do you have like a last rebuttal or case to be made for?
Well, I hate the sound of my own voice, so I wasn't actually listening to it that much. But yeah, no, I don't. I think somebody actually pointed this out, and I was thinking about this today in the chat. I think one of the big reasons that anybody arguing for Woolen does it, I think it's because expectations for Sauce were high. I don't think people had expectations for Woolen, and so while I think he's having a great season, I think he's getting extra credit because of like the narrative aspect of it. Whereas in my mind, and again, like I think I said it in there, I haven't watched the Seahawks enough to like fully like judge Tariq, but I just know the impact Sauce has made on the Jets defense, and I've seen him just not get beat, or when he does, it's one play and then he doesn't get beat again. And he hasn't really given up any touchdowns in my mind, because the one that he's dinged for by PFF was against the Browns, where it was a miscommunication, I think, with Jordan Whitehead, and even Saleh said that it wasn't his fault. So I've never seen a rookie have, I shouldn't say never, like Micah Parsons just last year, for example, is pretty amazing. But as a corner to have the season he's having at one of the hardest positions to play, I think, in the sport, he's the defensive rookie of the year for me. And to me, it's not especially close, though. I think Woolen has been remarkable.
I am excited to see Woolen against Garrett Wilson this week.
I was thinking it'll be a Garrett Wilson can go and help Sauce clinch the award if he really wants to just go and get some big catches on Tariq.
8 catches for 110 and a couple touchdowns.
Exactly.
Help the team, everyone get his teammates.
And then Sauce can force a fumble on Kenneth Walker and just make it like a double whammy. Yeah. And
everyone wins. All right, cool. With that, let's move on to the picks presented by BetMGM and our guest picker this week, Rohan Padye. I think I said that right. Rohan,
yeah, you nailed it.
Thanks for coming on, man.
Oh, thanks guys for having me. I'm excited for the picks. Yeah.
All right. Well, we like to talk to the guest picker a little bit before we get to the picks. So we'll start there. You're from Jersey. You still live in Brooklyn now, but you're from Jersey originally. But just talk about, how you became a Jets fan, because, in Jersey, Giants, Eagles, there's Eagles. Some options.
Yeah. That was the thing, is that I came to football pretty like late in my childhood. I was like 12 when I first started like paying attention. And that was the year that the Jets went to the AFC championship game, and Vinny Testaverde was the quarterback, and I won. What a great name, Vinny Testaverde. Love the name. And so like, I didn't know that much about football. I was like, this guy's a great name. And he was like fun to watch when I watched him. And I was like, okay, everybody I know is like either a Giants fan or an Eagles fan. And so I'm going to be a Jets fan. And then when Vinny Testaverde got benched, he got benched for Chad Pennington. And I was like a huge Chad Pennington fan. I was like I loved him. I was like, he's a Rhodes Scholar. He's so smart. He like threw to Randy Moss in college. Like he is like the first game that he played. I remember this distinctly. They were like, unlike Vinny Testaverde, Chad Pennington goes and high fives all his teammates. He high fives the entire special team and stuff.
It's like the Zach Wilson, Mike White dynamic.
Yeah, totally, 100%. And I was a big fan of Herm Edwards. Like when I was a teenager, he was like the coach. And you play to win the game, all that stuff. Like huge fan of that. And like the 2000s Jets from like 2000 to like 2010 was like very much like what the Jets are now, right? Like competing for a playoff spot, battling for that last wild card spot. But then when like Rex Ryan came in, that's like, that's like the golden era of like, to me, that's like the golden era of like Jets fandom. And at the time, I was living in Boston. I lived in Boston from like 2010 to like 2015. And, the Patriots are a religion there. So it was like, made me feel good that I was like a Jets fan in like territory. And I have like distinct memories of going to this bar in Harvard Square that was a Jets bar, like in the middle of Harvard Square, called Tommy Doyle. It's not there anymore. And I watched, the champ both years when they beat the Patriots.
Oh, nice.
Oh my God. Like that's my Super Bowl.
That's great. Well, you were telling us before we went live. So you do some stand-up comedy, and I think you have like a theory of why you're a Jets fan. That's
yeah. There's like a lot related to stand-up and being a Jets fan. So there's a lot. First of all, stand-up is full of like missed opportunities and failure. You think that everything is going good for a while. You think you're like a great comic. You think you got a lot of great jokes. You think you got time. And then you do it and you're like, oh God, I'm a giant, massive, this didn't work out the way I wanted it to, right? And then it's like, okay, that's like a lot like being a Jets fan. But then there are these like moments that like transcend that, like you're just chasing these moments. You have a great set. Maybe someone says something nice to you who you admire after a show. Maybe a fan recognizes you on a dating app, like that kind of thing. and you're like, oh crap, this is great. And like that's what being a Jets fan is like too. 2015 season, Brandon Marshall, Ryan Fitzpatrick, 10-6. That was a really, really fun year. Nobody expected them to be good that year, and they were. And so like then there's that. Then there's also like the Adam Gase years, which nobody really wants to talk about, and that's like my first like 4 years of stand-up comedy. So, so yeah, like being like learning from your mistakes, chasing these really, really good feelings, and then every once in a while, everything kind of goes well for you this season, and it's going, and you feel good about everything. So yeah, that's it. Being a Jets fan, there's a lot of heartache, but a lot of really wonderful moments. Watching Drew Brees get sacked by, I forgot who it was. That was like one of the one Jets games I've been to. They beat the Saints, Drew Brees the Saints, and it was like he got sacked like 3 times. It was incredible.
That's
yeah, so that's
awesome.
my overarching philosophy.
Love it.
Yeah.
All right, so on with the picks we go, and Marissa, you have the standings. We'll take a look. Things are getting tight again. 2 in 1 week from Dave last week for the listeners puts them back in a tie with Zach for the lead. We're all terrible, by the way.
Yeah.
The lead being 21-24 on the season. I'm 19-26. I was 2 in 1 last week, so it's one of the
making up
I think
some
it's
ground.
My 3rd winning week of the year, something ridiculous like that. Marissa 17-28 after another 1 and 2.
I just get one right every week. Like that's it.
You are consistent.
Yeah.
All right, we start with the leaders, which we could go either way, but I'll let you start, Rohan. So let us know who you got.
Listen, this week I've also decided to theme my picks this week. These are all picks that are Jets related. I'm not going to pick the Jets or Seahawks. I don't want to jinx. Do any sort of jinx. But my first pick is going to be the Dolphins over the Patriots plus 2.5. That's the line I see. I don't know what everybody else's line is. Right. Plus 2.5.
That's the BetMGM line.
Yeah, but 2.5. I think that Teddy's going to pull it out. I don't know have anything really to say. I think he's going to pull it out. They're better than people think, and Mac Jones is not good this season. Yeah. So there's that. Second pick, Panthers plus 3.5 against the Bucks. Sam Darnold is playing. He's got an incredible running game behind him. He's playing competently. This is what I wish he was doing with the Jets. I don't think he really got an opportunity to do that with the Jets. There a lot of turmoil in the upper management and the coaching and stuff, but I don't think he was given a fair shake, but he is in Carolina and he's been playing all right. So that's my second pick. And then my third pick is Monday night. Bills are going to beat the Bengals and have something to play for next week should the Patriots win against the Dolphins. So, all 3 Jets related picks this week for me.
I like that.
That would be a good weekend for the Jets. Yeah.
I have plus 3 for the Panthers. Are you okay with that instead of the 3.5?
Yeah, that works. Yeah, I agree. I would still take plus 3. Absolutely.
I just checked and it's 3.5.
Oh, okay.
Ooh.
All right. Never mind.
There you go. Correcting the correction.
Because I picked that one too.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right,
Nice.
Zach,
But that's not a good sign for you, Rohan.
yeah, that's not nice. Yeah. So I'm gonna go Steelers plus 2.5 against the Ravens, especially if I don't get the impression Lamar's gonna play again. And the Steelers, it feels like they're on a crash course to getting a winning record again, just because they always wind up with one with Mike Tomlin.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
They're on another hot streak at the end of the season. Like he's tried his best to not let that streak go. I got Niners minus 9.5 against the Raiders. Jarrett Stidham's the quarterback, and the 49ers are very good. So unless Stidham has something up his sleeve with McDaniels.
I'm still watching that Raiders clip over and over again. The one, the fumble. Oh my god.
Oh my god. Yeah.
It was like beautiful.
Imagine if that hadn't happened, where the Jets may be right now.
Oh
I
yeah.
need the Patriots to lose
probably be over
both
already,
games.
right? Yeah.
I was watching. I was actually in Vegas on a plane back, and I had it on my phone watching, and I'm like, this is just another Patriots win. They always do this. And then that happened. I was like, they turned into the Jets. This is incredible.
That was very Jetsian of them. Yeah. My last one, I got Jaguars -4 against the Texans. Jaguars are rolling right now. The Texans have been playing well lately, but I feel like the Jaguars, I guess this game doesn't necessarily matter.
Yeah,
for the
game
Jaguars.
doesn't matter. That's the only thing.
Is it just Tennessee? I'm
going to stick with it.
Yeah.
But I didn't think about that when I saw the line. But yeah, the game doesn't really matter. So I'm curious to see what the Jaguars do. But I still think they pull out the win. And Texans want to get the #1 pick, so they might maybe try to pull some guys out of the game or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the Jags are riding that momentum. So I think, and
I can't see them mailing it in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. All right. I have. I'm actually going to go Patriots over the Dolphins -2.5.
I like
but
have differences.
before you get mad at me, Jets fans, I do think the Bills are going to crush the Patriots in Week 18. So I don't think the Patriots beating the Dolphins means that much against the Jets because I think they still lose a game. I just think with up in New England, backup quarterback, the Patriots somehow find a way to win that game. Giants -6 versus the Colts. I just think the Colts are just so bad at this point. Giants are starting to get a little healthier, making their own push for the playoffs, obviously. The number's a little big, but I'm going to go with it. And then finally, going against your pick, Rohan, I'm going to go Bucks versus Carolina -3.5. Now, I thought it was 3, but I'll stick with it at 3.5. I just think really that could be for the division, right?
Yeah.
Like if they win that game and they get a little help, the Bucks can clinch that awful division this week. And I think with that on the line, Tom Brady comes up with a good game and beats the Panthers.
Yeah, I'm always very sorry, just quickly. I'm just like Tom Brady. I will always bet against Tom Brady. It's never worked for me. I want to be clear. It's never ever worked, but I will always do it.
Well, I feel like it's like the Brady and Rodgers, like all season it's been like, and then they're both going to end up back in the playoff. Like, how does that even happen? Yeah. We'll see. Okay. I am going to go Panthers also, +3.5 at the Bucks. Eagles playing for that #1 seed. I know Jalen Hurts practiced, but he's probably not going to play. Eagles -6.5 versus the Saints. I don't think they want to take this into next week. I think they're going to end this and be the #1 seed. So Gardner Minshew. And then Giants -6 versus the Colts. This one I wasn't a little too positive about, but I don't know. I think the Colts are just a disaster. And I think the Giants are like kind of coming back together after they started strong and then didn't look like the same team. So Giants -6 is my last pick. So we will see if I can redeem myself heading into the new year.
Yeah, I think the Eagles definitely win that game. It was the 6.5 that scared me away from that one. But
definitely a little high spread there. But I mean, I don't think they want to take this into next week. I think they're going to want to rest everybody. I don't think Jalen Hurts should play until the playoffs probably. So we'll see. But
all right, it's going to be a fun and wild weekend for Jets fans and the NFL in general. I think overall there's 24 teams that still have hopes of the playoffs with 2 weeks to go. It's pretty amazing. And a lot of those things will be figured out on Sunday and Monday night. So thanks for joining us for another episode of the Can't Wait podcast. Thank you to Rohan. Great stuff. Good luck with the comedy.
Thank you.
The Jets.
By the way, I should say real quick, I don't think Chris Streveler will be called up this week. I'm less confident.
No.
It's possible, but I don't get the sense that that'll happen again.
Well, he's been called up how many times so far?
Twice.
So he's got one more.
Yeah, one more.
Maybe
I want to see I want to see a fun package. I want to see.
I know. Fans got mad when I suggested that he might not actually mad. So I feel like my influence is too strong with this stuff. But also, Happy New Year to everybody. Had a lot of fun this year doing this pod with you guys. A couple more weeks to go, but thank you all for listening and tuning in every week to this craziness.
Yeah, I had thrown out the idea of New Year's resolutions for the Jets. I feel like we could do that next week, maybe too. Yeah. Since it'll be the New Year. So we had a lot to get to this week.
This game could determine a lot of those New Year's resolutions.
That's a good point. Very true. The other idea I had was could we do like what gifts to return from the Jets perspective? But I figured it would just be Zach Wilson.
And we've railed against him enough at this point.
But, yeah, so that's not even fun at this point. So, all right, if you want to join The Athletic, read all of Zach's great stuff, and Michael-Shawn Dugar, who you heard on this podcast too, $1 a month. I double checked, Marissa, $1 a month for 12 months.
Great deal.
But that's going to run out soon. That's just through the end of the year. So get in early. Go to theathletic.com/can't wait to get that deal. $1 a month for 12 months. Enjoy the games this weekend. We will talk to you again, I think, on, what do you guys think, Monday or Tuesday? Monday is a company holiday, by the way, but we can do it.
We'll figure this out.
We'll figure it out. Early next week, we'll have a full recap. Talk to everybody then.